Hi, welcome back. This session is on sleep. But before we talk about sleep, let's do something that we learned a couple of sessions ago, and that was that quick relax that we called the feather technique. Now, I hope you have been practicing that because it's something I generally have to do, well, certainly before I do one of these. And, I just did one. And if you remember, the feather technique is one in which you think of a wonderful time in your life. And what you're doing is infusing that, and you're telling your brain that all of those scary thoughts or fretful thoughts are really not necessary. I mean, you're not sitting in the midst of a trouble. And so you think of this glowing moment. And when you find yourself being uptight, or before you get into a stressful situation, during one, or after one, you can just take a breath, kind of wonder with yourself, am I in immediate trouble? And if you're not, I'll remember that glowing moment. Just going to smile with your eyes. You'll loosen your jaw. And you think about this feather floating down, and as it does, you let this air out just a little bit at a time. You let the rest of you go down. So try that a couple of times. It's something that you can do standing here talking. It may take a little practice, but I do it all the time. It's a way of telling myself that all the things, maybe the list of stuff that I have that I want to do, are the concerns I have. Am I going to get everything put in? Am I going to remember everything here? That it's not that important. You can just do the best you can. And so I'd like for you to sit there and take a few breaths and let some of those other things that maybe you brought into the room to watch this with, those things go to the side. You can get them later, You don't have to deal with them now because this is your time to do something for you. And if it's not your time to do something for you, turn this off and find a better time. You can come back and look at this a little later on, You don't have to do this while you're having to deal with 2 or 3 other things. I mean, that's kind of how we are. But you don't have to be that way, and that's part of the course here is understanding that there's other ways of being, and we do deserve to have things a little better for ourselves while we're making things better for others. So now let's talk about sleep. Sleep problems are real common for pain patients. You can get into a cycle of poor sleep, and then people get into feeling like, oh my, I've just ruined a whole day, and I'm cheating the next day, and then you grumble through the next day, this is not any fair, and then you go back to bed expecting yourself not to be able to sleep again, and it can get into a vicious circle. And yet, we don't have to have 8 hours. If you're not getting 8 hours, I can't remember when I got 8 hours, but people don't need 8 hours. In fact, 1 in 5 people get only a little less than 6 hours. Some people run on 3 hours and do just fine. It's different for different people, see? Now, those 3 hours, those 6 hours, those 8 hours, or whatever, they can be all interrupted through the night by frequent wakening. Because, when you have pain, you might have to turn over. Your pain tells you to turn over. It's uncomfortable in this spot. And if you're loving the hurt part and you get up to take care of it, maybe stretch or walk or whatever, and you don't get angry with it, you take care of it, then you go back to bed. So there may be frequent awakenings. But when you go back to sleep after that, no problem. That really does not disturb a good night's sleep. Because if we've had several nights of bad sleep, the miracle of our body is that it replaces all of that. And so we play catch up. Now the body has to go at night, goes through a psychological, a physical, and kind of a cognitive or intellectual recharging. And certain things have to happen. But the beauty of it is we don't have to worry about that. It is just done. What do we get, 3 hours sleep, 2 hours sleep? Where it's going to get done within a week or so period. We have about 5 stages of sleep. First stage, other than a wakefulness, I'm in a beta state. That means that my brain waves are going a certain style that they call beta, that when you're alert. Then when you start relaxing and you start feeling a little drowsy, you move into first stage 1, which is alpha. Now you don't have to remember this. Just understand there's different wavelengths, and I'll explain to you why you want to know there's different wavelengths. Stage 2 then is that you really start getting sleepy and your respiration starts going down, your body temperature drops, your heart rate goes down, and you move more into what is called theta. Now, alpha and theta are the 2 brainwave states or stages that when we do the relaxation and we do the visualization that we want to get into, because that's when the mind is most open for change and for us to tell it what it wants to do, what we want it to do. And then you get into the 3rd or 4th stage when the brainwave is delta. And this is the restoring stage. This is the deep sleep stage, where psychologically and intellectually we reprocess information. We reprocess our feelings and information. That comes at times through dreams. And then physically, we rejuvenate physically our muscles. We can go in, there is an REM stage. And REM stage is when we dream. Now that's called a paradoxical stage because our body, our muscles are almost unmovable for some of us, most of us. So muscles don't move, brain starts soaring. So the brain is very active, and that's a lot where we're processing things. Now, as I said, the great thing is that if we don't get those stages, we move from one to the other through the night and back and forth. And for instance, if we don't sleep enough to really spend much time in that deep restorative sleep, the next night or the next, we will move into that stage real quick. So it's like, maybe it's like shifting gears. If we haven't hit that last gear, if we just start out with that last gear later on. So over a period of time, we get enough time in each stage. And we don't even have to know about that. That's taken care of. All we got to do is get the junk out of our head so that we can begin to relax or go to sleep. Now, go to sleep. Going to sleep is a real passive experience. You don't try to go to sleep. Have you ever gone on vacation and you get packed about midnight and you've got to get up at 3 a.m, so I've got 3 hours to sleep. I've got to get in there and go to sleep. How many times have you just laid there until 3 a.m? Many times. You just don't make yourself go to sleep. It's a passive experience. In fact, a study was done with college students, and they took two groups, and college students are always needing extra money, so they volunteered to come and do this sleep study. And one group was told, you guys just go to sleep whenever, your usual way. Of course, they were timed and how long it took them, and whether or not they really were asleep or not through all these machines. Then the other group hooked up just the same way. They were told, look, we want you to go sleep as fast as you can. And if the ones who can go to sleep the fastest, gets the most money. Who went to sleep first? The group that didn't have to try. The group that was trying to go to sleep didn't go to sleep. Now, usually, in the past, psychologists use rats to do experiments with, and now I understand we're using lawyers to do psychological experiments with, because we have learned that there are certain things rats won't do. When you're in bed and you're trying to go to sleep, you don't want to push yourself to go to sleep. What you want to do is get yourself in the same position as a child who, psychologically, in the position of a child that is well fed, wrapped tight and smoothly, and is held in safe, loving arms. Now, if you don't feel safe, you see, it's not time to go to sleep. If there's trouble that's coming in on you, it's not time to go to sleep. That would be a fretful child who doesn't go to sleep. So you want to get yourself in a position of being that child that's full and loving, safe arms. They can go to sleep. Now, how do you do that? Well, we're going to talk about that. When you go to bed, going to bed and preparing to go to sleep is a conscious act. You want to prepare that place for yourself. So you want to get a time that you have a time that you prepared to go to bed, which means that right before you go to bed, you don't want to go doing exercises. You don't want to stir yourself up. You want to have a time that you're calming down. So you're not going to get Aunt Minnie and Uncle Fudd on the phone and start discussing something that might be controversial. You want to calm down. Now, what I do at times is I'll play solitaire, a mindless game, or I'll watch a Western or something on TV, something that, you can walk in the middle of and pick up on. Nothing that you're going to have to get your mind involved in. I don't want my mind stirred when I get ready to go to bed. I want it calm. Then, you want to ask yourself, is there, the things I still got going in my head, is it necessary for me to keep these and deal with them all night? I mean, can some of them, do I have any control over them, And if you don't, do you have to keep these all night long? Can we let them go? So it helps if if you're trying to remember all the things you got to do tomorrow, and you got to pick up Aunt Minnie, and you got to do this first, though, and you're worried about how that's all going to write it all out. Get it written out before you go to bed. Don't sit there and try to go through it and get it all ordered after you go to bed. The other thing to do is things that we've already talked about. Use the feather technique. Now, is the world going to come to an end if I just let these things go? Some of you may have been listening to the balloon technique, the relaxation exercise. There's one in here concerning the river of letting go. There is one in here concerning a trip on a sailboat. All of those are ways at some point to release those thoughts just for a while for that night. So after you get all that, you either write them down or you give yourself permission to let them go. Then you want to begin to get yourself in a position of this child I'm talking about, who is wrapped firmly and in loving arms. So what you think about has got to be nice, pleasant thoughts. So if it's not necessarily pleasant around you at that moment, and again, it's some of those things we don't necessarily have control over. But we can remember times that was, or we can imagine times that would be or could be. So fill your head with pleasant thoughts. Now, some of us might have light switch minds. So doesn't matter what we're thinking during the day, as we lay down in bed, as soon as the head hits the pillow, it's like flipping the light switch, they're out. Then there is the excited mind. This is where you lay down and the mind keeps going. What are you going to do with that? Well, we've already talked about that in some ways. You're going to either use some of the techniques to give yourself permission to release that for the night, or you're going to write them down, or you're going to begin to practice getting your mind to calm. And we've talked about that in another session, but essentially what you do is after you relax, every day, you do a 5-6 minute relaxation, and then you pay attention to your breathing. Just pay attention to one thing. And other thoughts will be coming by through your head, and instead of grabbing them and dealing with them and bringing them down and struggling with them, you're just going to let them go on by and just pay attention to your breathing. You do that 5 minutes a day, and that will begin to calm your mind. This is something, like I've said with everything else that I talk about here, I do it. I did it. It did help. So if you've got this excited mind and your mind's always going, you're going to have to work on it at night, like we've talked about with some other of those techniques I mentioned. But every day you're going to have to prepare your mind, begin to teach your mind that it doesn't have to juggle all of this stuff all the time in order to keep you safe. Now, the other style is what I call the uneasy mind, and that's the one that maybe you function fine during the day, but somehow when you lay down, some of this old business or unfinished business, or maybe feelings of being unsafe, maybe feelings of being even unsafe as a child, start coming back. And you don't feel safe. And so it's hard to sleep. Well, for that, try what we've just mentioned with the excited mind, plus 2 other things. Start getting those thoughts and writing them down, journal them. And if that doesn't help, consider seeking some professional help for that. This is not your fault, but it's something that may be affecting you that you can work on. It's not a sign of mental illness. I mean, your body is saying we're not safe, and you've got to figure out how to tell the mind that you are safe, you see. Now, I recommend a lot of times in situations like that you write up on your bed, your bathroom mirror, I do not live in so-and-so's home. So if you had an experience where you didn't feel safe because of a person, a place, then you want to tell your brain, I'm not there. I don't live there under those circumstances anymore. Because that's really what it takes to calm that system. Okay, so let's go over a view of the things that might help you in working on your sleep. And there's 9 rules. The first rule is you don't try to fall asleep. Remember, you want to think about those things that give you that good warm feeling, a feeling that you're this safe, faithful, loved child. If you want to go to bed and get up like what most people do, like at 10:30 and get up at 6:30, if you want to live in that, then you're going to need to get up. Go to bed and get up every day at the same time. Now the reason for that, that's even on weekends. The reason for that is this. What puts you to sleep is your body temperature. That begins to trigger all kinds of things to happen in your body. And your body temperature fluctuates through the day, and there's highs and lows. And so you want to get your body temperature, if you're going to bed at 10:30, then after the news or whatever, you want that body temperature going down at that time. You got to train it. And then if you're going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, then you got to get that body temperature where it's starting to rise at that time. Because if your body temperature at 10:30 is starting to come up, you ain't going to bed. You're not going to go to sleep anyway. If I flew from New York to Los Angeles, there's a 3-hour difference. And my bedtime is at 11 o'clock, and I start to go to bed at 11 o'clock in Los Angeles. Well, I'm not going to be very sleepy because I'm not ready to go to bed. My body doesn't know to go to bed until 2 o'clock in the morning. Because if you're traveling, then that's what you call jet lag. Now, the other rule is you do not want to take a nap. If you're wanting to go and get on a regular schedule, you do not want to take a nap more than 40 minutes during the day. I don't care how much you didn't sleep. You do not want to take a nap. Because naps over 40 minutes is going to throw that body temperature off. It's going to flip it out of a cycle. Okay? And you want to train it. Just start coming up in the morning and go down about 10:30. So you don't want to take naps more than 40 minutes. The other thing you want to do is to stay fairly active. Now on those days, if we don't do much and then we don't sleep well, we say, well, we've rested all day, we haven't been active. Well, that's part of it, not that tired. But when we're inactive, our body temperature just doesn't react well. It gets kind of thrown off. And that's the other reason, that if you're not very active, you don't sleep very well. So going through regular exercise, and that may be, what I'm talking about, just doesn't mean going out and jogging. That means doing your daily chores and pacing yourself and staying within your limits, but moving. And not being laid up for 2 days, you're not going to sleep well because your body temperature is going to drop because of that. Or it's not going to function as well. In the mornings, you want to immerse your eyes in sunlight. I don't mean, burn them. I mean get light in the room. If you're not going to be outside, open up the drapes where you can see. The sunlight comes in. Now, the reason for that is that sunlight decreases melatonin. Melatonin, when it's around, it starts dropping body temperature. So when the sunlight gets into your eyes, that's a signal for the body to stop making melatonin. And as the production of melatonin goes down, your body temperature starts coming up. So getting the sunlight in your eyes. You want to keep your bedroom cool. Again, we're talking about body temperature. You don't want to go to bed hot. You want the room to stay about 65 degrees. If you're in thermostat wars, I'm sorry I started one here, but it needs to be cool when you go to bed. Again, because you want your body temperature to go down. Noises sometimes really do mess someone up in their sleep. Now, if you're used to staying safe by listening, well, this becomes pretty important. That's why some people having fans, or you can buy commercially white noise, and that just plugs into your wall. That helps. Keeping the room as quiet as possible is important. To some, to others, a repeated noise like a fan, it helps. And there is good research because a repeated noise helps you get more into that theta wavelength. So it helps you get into a position of relaxation easier, that repeated noise. Drinking caffeine, taking in nicotine, those are stimulants. So you do not want to be doing that before you go to bed if you have problems sleeping. Alcohol will get you to sleep. It'll put you down. But the problem is when alcohol starts wearing off, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're not sleeping well anyway because that alcohol keeps you from going through those stages. Plus, it relaxes your throat, and snoring and sleep apnea are worse when you're using alcohol. Carbohydrates and snacks like that are good an hour before you go to bed. Proteins, spicy foods or not. Keep in mind that when you're sleeping, when you're resting, your gut starts slowing down. So spicy food would be sitting there, so it wouldn't be feeling very good after a while at all. Now the other one is you don't want to stay in bed more than 30 minutes. So if you don't go to sleep within 30 minutes, get up. Go do something else. So if you've got all this stuff going through your mind, get up and start writing about it. Now don't get up and start finding papers and pencils. Have that prepared so you don't add extra, frustration to yourself. Put a pad and a piece of paper and a pencil on your kitchen table so when you get up, you can go in there and you just want to write out everything you need to write out to keep yourself, to get it all out. And when you finally get sleepy, go to bed. If your mind flips on again, get up and start writing. Now that is if you want to go to sleep at 10:30 like a lot of people do and get up at 7. If you don't, I have patients who don't live like that. And my message today about sleep is don't fight it. You're going to get it. It's not going to affect your health. There's no research that indicates that a poor night's sleep or several poor night's sleep is going to affect your health or your mental abilities. Don't sweat it. I have a client who wakes up at 3 a.m. And he used to fret about it. And now he just has things prepared to do at 3 a.m. And his wife gets up and he sees her off to work and then he messes around, does his thing, and he goes to bed about 11 o'clock, and by the time she gets home, he's up and feeling refreshed and going. It's working fine. You don't have to sleep in those little special slots that the TV says you need to sleep in. So enjoy the time. If you can't sleep, it really doesn't matter. Find something you can do that's enjoyable. Read a book. Have that laid out so you can, get a good movie out. If you don't fall asleep tonight, you have a movie you can watch. Don't fight it. Now, the other thing, and the last thing we need to talk about here is sleep. Something we all experience that is waking up in the middle of the night hurting like a big dog. What do you do? Well, I encourage you to Practice loving the hurt part at that time. You know, that part is waking you up, not trying to mess with you. It's like the analogy we gave just a few days ago about the child waking you up. They're not waking you up because you're a bad parent. They want to make your life miserable. They'll wake you up because they're sick and they need your help. Well, this is what's happening. So when my back wakes me up and my leg is on fire and I have to get up and go sit in a recliner, you know, there's a tendency, and I've done it, gotten angry. But getting angry with it doesn't help. So just remember, you know, that is not waking you up, and my leg is not waking me up just to make my life miserable. It needs some attention. And if I don't fight it, and I try to figure out what it needs, like we talked about a few days ago, you can start calming it down. There is exercises on the relaxation sessions about how to reduce the pain, and you can use those at night too, if that's what that part is needing. And your job is to figure out what's going to make it comfortable without getting fussy with it. Well, you have good dreams, and I'll see you next time. I'm Dr. Hawkins.